On July 23, 1967, the calm of a summer night shattered in Detroit. A late-night raid by police descended on an unlicensed after-hours bar on 12th Street, targeting a place known to serve as a refuge for the local African-American community. This was not just an invasion. It was a symbol of the growing disconnect between law enforcement and the very citizens they were meant to protect. Inside the bar, patrons enjoyed music and camaraderie. When officers stormed in, chaos erupted. The police arresting some patrons triggered shock and disbelief. Friends and neighbors, caught off guard, reacted instinctively. As word spread, a crowd gathered outside, drawn by the commotion. They arrived with questions. Why this bar? Why these people? What began as an act of kindness, gathering to support friends suddenly caught in a police crackdown, quickly morphed into a front line of confrontation. Bystanders felt a deep-rooted sense of betrayal, a growing injustice that simmered not just from this raid, but from years of systemic neglect and abuse. In the backdrop, Detroit was rife with tension. The 1960s saw drastic socioeconomic divides, especially in its African-American neighborhoods. Job opportunities for Black residents dwindled, schools were segregated, and housing discrimination left many feeling trapped in a cycle of poverty. The community was battered by a lack of access to essential resources and a consistent pattern of aggressive policing. Those frustrations came to a head on that fateful evening. As the crowd grew, so did the sense of urgency. Bystanders who came to defend those inside the bar felt the weight of historical injustice pressing down on them. Many had lived through the warm promises of change, but were still facing the cold reality of discrimination and violence. That night felt like a tipping point, a moment when pent-up anger surged into the open air. The officers, fueled by their own authority, reacted with more force. The atmosphere thickened with tension, echoing the broader racial climate. Voices from the street shouted, demanding fairness and respect. But as officers pushed back against the crowd, the feeling of camaraderie quickly morphed into something more volatile. Calmness turned to outrage. One spark would ignite a flame of rebellion that none could foresee. Amid the shouts and confusion, the crowd's frustration boiled over. The sense of betrayal cemented their resolve. They were no longer just bystanders. They were warriors in a fight against oppression, standing up for their community. This escalated confrontational atmosphere ignited the growing movement against systemic racism, one that had been brewing in shadows across Detroit and the nation. Those early hours set the stage for the chaos that would soon engulf the city. Yet beneath the surface of this unyielding turmoil lay another truth. How could a simple act of kindness transform into a flashpoint for violence? What larger forces were in play, fueling this raging fire? As Detroit sank into chaos, one thing became clear. This was just the beginning. What would happen next would change the city forever. The question looms, could a community deeply wounded by betrayal find a way to heal amidst the flames? As the clock struck midnight on July 23, 1967, the tensions erupted. A crowd, initially gathered in anticipation of a peaceful conclusion, transformed into a mass of unrest. Anger bubbled over as shouts filled the air. What began with a police raid turned into a scene of escalating violence. The glow of flames flickered against the night sky as burning buildings lit up the dark. Bars, stores, and homes became targets. The first flames licked around the corners of a grocery store, quickly spreading. Within hours, entire blocks were engulfed. Shop windows shattered with a symphony of chaos. The sound of sirens mingled with the screams of the terrified. Hoffman's drugstore, a staple in the community, and the local police station were among the first to fall victim to the blaze. As the unrest grew, bystanders responded in various ways. Some tried to help, dragging out belongings from burning establishments or shielding one another from the chaos. Yet others seized the opportunity to join the violence, looting stores and setting fires. This duality of action revealed a community deeply fractured. Some sought to salvage what little hope remained, while others were drawn deeper into the mayhem. Amid the chaos, local law enforcement struggled to maintain control. Police fired tear gas as the crowd surged, trying to disperse the gathering. Officers, overwhelmed and outnumbered, resorted to aggressive tactics. The brutal force only seemed to ignite the flames of resistance. The situation deteriorated rapidly. In response to the chaos overtaking the streets, the National Guard was called in. By the dawn of July 24th, over 1,500 soldiers arrived, armed and ready to restore order. Statistically, the consequences were staggering. In just the first few days, reports indicated 43 lives lost. Over 7,000 arrests filled the jails to capacity. Property damage soared, exceeding $40 million, a staggering number given the economic context of the city. Businesses that had served the community for generations lay in ruin. Injuries were reported in the hundreds, affecting individuals caught in the crossfire of violence and chaos. While some residents fought back against oppression, many others felt betrayed. Their pleas for justice met with further violence from law enforcement. Each act of aggression reinforced a painful cycle. The community's heritage and resilience stood at a precipice, teetering on the brink of destruction. As night descended once again on July 24th, the question loomed like the smoke rising from smoldering ruins. How could a battle for justice devolve into a war of survival? What strings of betrayal would be untangled as the fight for civil rights clashed violently with the reality of oppression? The city waited with bated breath, teetering on the edge of profound change or utter collapse. What would emerge from the ashes of Detroit? As the sun rose on July 24th, the streets of Detroit were steeped in chaos and uncertainty. Amidst this turmoil, community leaders sprang into action. Figures like Reverend William J. Lucas, who headed the Detroit chapter of the NAACP, and local activist and businessman Jesse Hill worked tirelessly to restore calm. These leaders organized meetings to appeal to residents to avoid violence, urging them to come together and protect their neighborhoods rather than tear them apart. They mobilized support from organizations like the Black Panther Party and local churches, emphasizing peace and unity. Despite their efforts, the unrest continued to evolve, revealing a complex tapestry of community response. Some bystanders lent a hand, courageously defending local businesses and standing between looters and their targets. Others, however, escalated tensions, emboldened by the frenzy, joining the waves of destruction. This duality defined the human experience amid crisis, bravery juxtaposed with betrayal. Witness testimonials paint a vivid picture. A shop owner recalled how neighbors formed protective circles around his store, reminding him that we're more than just this place, we're a community. In stark contrast, another resident described feeling betrayed by a childhood friend who he saw participating in the looting of their shared neighborhood. The fractures within the community were painfully evident as friendships were tested and loyalties fractured in the face of chaos. Media coverage exacerbated the situation. National news outlets descended on Detroit, broadcasting images of flames engulfing buildings and scenes of violence. The portrayal fed into existing racial stereotypes, framing the riots through a lens of chaos and lawlessness. Headlines often lacked nuance, stripping away the deeper story of social injustice and chronic grievances that had simmered for years. Residents felt further alienated, their voices subdued beneath the clamor of sensationalist reporting. As the days wore on, the city grappled with its identity, torn between progress and peril. Radio announcements urged calm, but images of destruction flashed across screens. Children remained indoors, mothers worried over their safety, and a palpable sense of loss weighed heavy in the hearts of many. Local neighborhood associations sought to bridge divides, providing critical support and dialogue, yet faced an uphill battle against mistrust and fear. Conflict bred confusion. Even well-intentioned actions sometimes crossed wires. A neighborhood rally meant to promote unity inadvertently drew police presence, sparking misunderstandings and further unease. The complexity of human behavior emerged starkly as individuals sought to connect while being pushed apart by the very forces meant to protect them. Among these mounting tensions, the question loomed: could the community rise from the ashes of betrayal and find a path to healing? Would the voices striving for peace pierce through the din of destruction, or would the flames of division continue to blaze? As Detroit stood on the precipice of change, the answer hung precariously in the balance. What would unfold in the days to come would redefine not just a city, but the nation itself. In the aftermath of the Detroit riots, the city lay in ruins. By the time the National Guard restored order, 43 lives had been lost, Thousands were injured, and over 1,400 buildings had been destroyed. The once vibrant neighborhoods were reduced to phantoms of their former selves, as ashes settled on the streets that had witnessed both hopes and horrors. The economic toll was staggering. Damage estimates reached upwards of $50 million, leaving businesses devastated and families displaced. The communities that survived faced a daunting task of rebuilding, both physically and emotionally. Trust had been shattered. The riots exposed the stark divisions between races and classes in Detroit. African-American neighborhoods, already struggling, now faced Herculean challenges. Economic investment dwindled, and many white residents left for the suburbs, creating a demographic shift that deepened isolation. The remaining community grappled with unanswered questions about loyalty and betrayal. Who could they trust? Who would stand beside them in times of turmoil? The impact on race relations was profound. The riots underscored systemic inequalities. Many African Americans felt further marginalized, while law enforcement's approach shifted drastically. The relationship between police and the black community soured. Tensions simmered. The feeling of being policed rather than protected took root. Heavy-handed tactics became commonplace, further alienating residents. Tensions erupted again in subsequent years, as police-community interactions were marred by distrust. In the years that followed, the lessons from the riots catalyzed activism and community organizing efforts across Detroit. Leaders emerged, highlighting the need for people to come together, not just during crises, but in daily life. Community-based initiatives aimed to bridge trust gaps and promote dialogue between residents and police. Yet the scars of that summer ran deep, and the fear of betrayal lingered. Despite the turmoil, signs of resilience emerged. Neighborhood organizations began tackling root causes of unrest, poverty, education disparities, and housing inequities. They convened town hall meetings, creating spaces for voices that had long been silenced to be heard. A sense of unity grew among some, as residents banded together to reclaim their neighborhoods, determined to remember what was lost, but also to rebuild with purpose. As Detroit evolved, so too did the conversations surrounding race and justice. The riots served as a catalyst for civil rights movements, with activists pushing for social changes that echoed well beyond local borders. Yet the cycle of violence seemed to beckon. Would true reconciliation occur, or would the history of betrayal and mistrust repeat itself? The lessons of the Detroit riots linger on. They challenge us to reflect on how communities can respond to injustice, how dialogue can replace hostility, and how unity can arise from despair. But in the wake of all this, one question remains. After the smoke cleared, did Detroit truly learn to trust again, or did new betrayals lie just around the corner?